I have a question for Friedberg. One of your exceptions there was investments in science. You want to talk about your opinion on the quality of the grant process at the NIH and whether we are doing the real work necessary to get the right things funded?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good transition to what happened this week, which was that there was a major potential fraud uncovered in Alzheimer's research, which has led to over $1.5 billion of funding and grants being given out to follow on Alzheimer's research programs in the years that followed this initial paper. So, in 2006, there was a paper published in the journal Nature about amyloid beta proteins that impaired memory in brains, which then became kind of the leading theory for the cause and the driver of Alzheimer's disease. And much of the research and funding that followed from there, which is now up to several $billion in total funding in private and public institutions. Last year alone, the NIH funded $287 million in research into amyloid beta. And it turns out that the initial paper was shown to be fraudulent. And so, just recently, the journal Science published in detail an analysis of the photos of the Western blot measurements, the protein recognition images that the scientists used in this initial paper were forged, and that many papers of his were then forged years later. And this paper is one of the most cited papers in Alzheimer's research, and much of the work that's been done on Alzheimer's came out of this. And if you guys remember last year, we talked about that Biogen drug. That Biogen drug is meant to stop amyloid beta plaque. And the projection is that Alzheimer's drug, and remember, there was a panel of scientists that looked at the data for that drug that Biogen got approval for from the FDA. And they all said this does not show conclusively in any way that it improves Alzheimer's. And the FDA still approved the drug because so much of the NIH funding went into the research for amyloid beta. And so the assumption has always been, this is the cause of Alzheimer's. This is the way to resolve it. And everyone gets so strongly held in that core belief, and there's so much money behind it, that we can't turn away and say, maybe we're wrong. And this is the problem when science meets money. Once you go from funding something and then suddenly a whole bunch more money pours into it, everyone's going to look bad and everything's going to fall apart. And everyone fears that the system fails if you realize that something you did and said was so totally wrong. We could even argue this is what happened recently with COVID, the masks, the vaccines, all of the statements that were made, that you have to keep doubling down.